And now she's gone to consumer tech, which I love even hearing ISA consumer technology, because that's such an inside baseball way of even talking about what you do.
It is? That's so funny. I didn't even know
it's
that.
like there's B2B, consumer technology.
Right. I guess I'm that far down the rabbit hole at this point.
Yeah.
But Sean and I coincidentally, Sean and I went to the same college. Obviously not at the same time. I'm like double his age, but we went to the same college, which is Oberlin, which is a liberal arts college in Oberlin, Ohio, a very small town that has like 2 main streets. And that's why, going to Oberlin is not why I got into puppetry, but I was an art student. And at places like Oberlin, suddenly you find yourself becoming a puppeteer. Sean is laughing because he knows what I mean. Like stuff like that ends up happening. I think because people that go to Oberlin fancy themselves to be like, I don't even know, like some sort of bleeding edge of cool, where, I guess I thought I was that. And I wanted to do something experimental and was an art student and, did all the normal liberal arts college stuff. But basically when I graduated from college or was approaching graduation, I realized, as many 21-year-olds realize, that they are not at all prepared to get a job or do any of the normal adult stuff. So because I had that foresight, I applied for a fellowship, which is basically like code for like an extension on your lack of responsibility time. And so I applied for a fellowship that is called the Thomas J. Watson Fellowship, which exists at several different colleges. I think that they pick around 29 people around the country. And each person does a project of their own design. So Thomas J. Watson was the founder of IBM. And basically his belief was that young people should spend time living abroad. And so the only criteria of the fellowship in order to win the money is that you make a project of your own design and you're not allowed to have your feet on American soil for the full year. So you need to like go, you take that amount of money, I think it was something like $22,000, and you can't come home. And then you come back and you do a presentation about what you learned. So I did my project, which is about avant-garde and experimental puppet theater. Puppetry is a tradition that exists in almost every single culture. There's like bunraku in Japan, marionettes in France, Czech Republic has a strong tradition, Poland. So there was a lot of places that I was able to go and study this art form. And I was able to delay getting a job. So that was my main goal. Looking back, that was my main goal.
I could not love you more. I had no idea, but it's so awesome.
I know, it's true. It's actually true. It sounds like I'm lying, but it's true.
No, it's so good. Oberlin, at least when Gigi and I were in magazines, was also where all the magazine editors came from. So it seems like you guys were determined to establish culture. Kim France, Ramon Alam.
Yeah, Ramon.
Yeah. And I feel like, I'm sure there are so many more. It was like the feeder school for Condé Nast. It was like the Upper East Side and Oberlin.
Yeah. Unknowingly, I guess. But Ramon Alam, who is a very well-known author, also went there, and he's like way cooler than
all of us.
All of us, yeah.
But he worked. Ramon and I and Gigi worked at Lucky together, where he was like a terrible assistant, but an amazing person and a brilliant writer. So he's in a much better place. I think he's people like Ramon, though, are a good reminder sometimes of like, you're not going to succeed at every job, and you might be terrible at one thing in one industry and be exceptional in a different part of it, if that makes sense. But not everyone's made for being an assistant. So how did you end up was it Nylon first?
I ended up when I was a student at Oberlin, I did an internship during this thing called winter term, which is like a semester in which you're meant to like go out and do a personal project. And I was an intern at New York Magazine. Um, Before everyone came on, I was sort of acknowledging to Elise and Joe about the role that luck has played in my career. And so I was an intern at New York Magazine at the time, working for the then fashion director, a woman named Sally Singer. And
No big deal.
Yes. And when, because New York Magazine was like a tiny operation, there was like nobody in the fashion department. So I was just doing everything, faxing, remember faxing? So I was faxing the documents, writing all the credits for the fashion stories, dragging all of the clothes to the photo shoots, and doing everything that she needed to be done, like, picking up stuff from her apartment when she forgot stuff, and really was able to get to know her really well. She's extremely smart and was and continues to be a great mentor. And so then after I had finished my puppetry career, which lasted about a year and a half, I applied for a job as an assistant at a brand new magazine that was launching at Condé Nast called Teen Vogue. This is like all dating, like how old we all are. But so Teen Vogue was just launching as a print magazine. And I applied to be the fashion assistant in their closet, which basically means that you run the fashion closet, you assist all the editors, AKA like pick up their lunch and dry cleaning, do whatever needs to be done. And because I had Sally on my resume, when they looked at my resume, they said, "Oh, you work for Sally, can we call her?" And little did I know, because I hadn't been following or properly like keeping up with my network, I didn't know that she had become the fashion features director at Vogue. So again, that was a very lucky thing. When I was her intern at New York Magazine, there's no way that I could have known that she would have taken that role a few years later, because I ended up getting that job the next day, because I'm sure I had a good recommendation, and that just ended up pushing me above the other candidates.
There's luck, certainly, but as we were also saying, you're clearly very talented and a really hard worker. Case in point, I had no meaningful internships ever, and certainly did not get a fellowship when I left college. But I do think, and I'm sure our experiences were the same. Magazine, there's a sisterhood, I think, in every industry, and a brotherhood, whereby it does sometimes only require, it's like that first foot in the door. If you can really maximize it, and then you can start to use it for leverage. Like Gigi, who we keep talking about, was that lucky with me, and she was a formidable force in helping me just get my foot more and more in the door by giving me opportunities and advocating for me and pushing for me. She was one of the early champions for me, which I think and that's, I think, one of the best parts about being more senior anywhere, is the chance to sort of pull people along and help people out who are very deserving, Aya.
Thanks. I mean, I think also the other thing that got me that job, and at this point I was 23 or something, so it's quite a bit of time ago, but was being different from the traditional sort of fashion school candidate that they were seeing a lot of. So I wasn't wearing designer clothes. I was wearing like shoes that I had like painted on. This is like a very Gigi moment, because Gigi is one of the most creative people we know. So it's like wearing these like clogs that I had like painted a design on, and I had like half of my head shaved and blonde like tips on my hair. And I think that because the goal of Teen Vogue was to have the magazine feel like creative and like DIY, I didn't know that they were going to want an assistant who was willing to I would be like dyeing ballet shoes in my like bathroom tub for a photo shoot and doing stuff like that, I think that I didn't realize that I was demonstrating my enthusiasm for being creative in a lot of different ways. That wasn't just like, I like designer clothes. You know what I mean?
Right. No, for sure. And I think that those qualities, particularly, I think when we're seeing, I'd be curious about your perspective on this, but there's so much within sort of like the world of influencers and tastemakers, and as magazines have sort of dwindled in their influence, there's so much sort of even homogenous faces. I don't know, I'm getting old, but I go through Instagram and I'm like, all of these people look the same. I don't know what's happening, but I feel like we're going to start to see another resurgence and people really distinguishing themselves. Maybe when we can go outside again and wear real clothing, and but that there, I feel like we must be at a breaking point where this desire, like people who are just different, will really start to distinguish and reestablish a different type of culture than everything being the same. Well, I don't know.
Amen. I certainly hope that that's the case. And I'd be certainly curious if there's anyone in the room that has an opinion on this. And just wanted to say that in the reaction button, there's this thing called raise your hand. It basically looks like that, where you can raise your hand, and if there's anything you want to ask, and just come off mute and ask Elise and I. We're certainly willing to kind of like make this conversational, because I'm like so curious about all of you guys. But yes, I do think that everything that we experienced in 2020 certainly allowed us to like think about, like, you know, there were some ways as working from home made me feel several days like I only had a body from the neck up. Like whatever was going on from the neck down, like, was irrelevant. Certainly my back pain was like increasing as I was sitting on video calls all the time. But that also I was able to sort of like focus on different parts of my life. So I certainly hope, so as you're saying, that as things start to open up, that we can like think about personal style in a different way than we did before. I'm never wearing heels again. I won't do it. I'm never wearing.
Really?
No, not interested. I'm also 5'10", so I'm not going to wear.
I hear you. And your mom, I don't know. I gave up almost. I have like 2 pairs of high heels. I have like a requisite pair of black high heels that do come in handy, and maybe 1 pair that's brown. So I remember running into you. I don't know if I remember running into you in the subway, and I think you maybe were I can't remember if you were at Nylon or back at Teen Vogue, and you were contemplating a move, or was I just trying to make you move to Los Angeles? I can't remember, but you did it, right?
I did.
And I don't know, it felt like a way for you to distinguish yourself. Like it seemed like you were at an impasse, or like sort of at a crossroads of trying to, can you explain what was happening in that moment of time? Because I feel like you blew up.
Thanks. I mean, I just realized at a certain point, I mean, and doesn't take a brain surgeon to realize that working in the publishing world was not like a long-term proposition. As a person who is a parent and needs to sort of see a long-term future of earning money. I knew that I needed to change something about my career. And so I knew that I had a skill set as a fashion editor and a stylist working on set of photo shoots and videos and whatnot. So I figured I would take a contract working with Teen Vogue, which was the magazine I was working in at that time, to free myself up to move to LA and have some time to also explore like full-time celebrity styling as a possible outcome. And then I moved back like 10 months later.
But I feel like in that moment, and distinguishing yourself or like being on the West Coast, maybe it was just my perception, but it seemed like you like jumped like multiple levels in that 10 months. Is that me just being delusional?
I don't know. I certainly didn't feel that way about myself. The main reason why I came back was because all of my clients were in New York. So I would go to LA to this apartment in Los Feliz that I had gotten and I was trying to set up my life there. But at the time, all of my clients as a freelance stylist were in New York. So I kept on flying back to work. And so as a fairly practical person, after about 9-10 months of that, I was like, well, this doesn't make sense. Like when I was doing my end of year summary with myself, I was kind of like this, looking at my, client list the vast majority of them had been in New York. So it was almost like I was like going to LA to be on vacation. Look, I understand that if I would have stuck it out for longer and built the client base in LA, then it would have been worth it in a long term. But it was more kind of, I was happy with the clients that I was building in New York. So it was just basically like a stint of living in Los Angeles. There's a future world in which I would move to California. I mean, obviously everything is different now that I have a family. So that would be a choice that of course does not involve just me.
California would welcome you. I'm telling you, it's not a bad place to be. And then you obviously got sucked back into the full-time vortex of magazines for a long time. Like you really stuck it out. And then now you're in consumer technology, which makes me so happy, having sort of made that leap 10 years ago, and being alone. I took a much less illustrious job than the one that you have, but I knew I needed to leave magazines for exactly the reason that you said, to have find a viable way to have a family. There was simply no way I could afford to be a magazine editor in New York City, with a husband who works sort of in the world of furniture and design and like raise a kid. We were going to have to move to do a 2-hour commute or something. So I bailed, for which I'm very happy that I did, but it was hard because it's a different language. As you mentioned, I went really far outside of, you're sort of, I feel like almost tangentially sort of you're still in the world of personal style and creativity, and like it all makes sense to me, but what has that been like for you?
I think that, look, now that I have left the world of publishing, like I can say with a certain amount of certainty that being a magazine editor is perhaps the most fun job in the world. Like the job itself, and I promise I'm not looking back with rose-colored glasses. Like there's just something about being tapped into like every single part of culture, like by 9 a.m., like our Slack room was like, I was fully up to speed with every single thing that had happened overnight in everything from like full-on news to like celebrity gossip. Like you just know everything that's happening because there's an editor who covers that, right? And so they're all sort of sharing what they've learned over the past few hours. So I think that there's something really great about the media and publishing world in terms of how plugged in you are to like every little twist and turn of what's happening out there in culture. That said, at a certain point, when I became the editor-in-chief of Marie Claire, I had not had an aspiration to be an editor-in-chief. In fact, I would have never, frankly, dreamed that big for myself. I would have never thought that I would be qualified to do that type of a job. And I was having like a perfectly great, wonderful, happy time doing that job. I felt so blessed and lucky to have been given that opportunity that I was, going to do everything in my human power to make it great. Even in the condition that the magazine industry was in, I was like, I can make this thing happen. But really what happened was that the Pinterest opportunities sort of came along, and I knew that if I spent another year or two doing the magazine world, then that would be another year or two that I had not learned new skills, right? Mm-hmm. Because I had worked in the publishing. Oh, I'll check that question in a second, Holly. I had worked in the publishing world for, oh my God, I think like 15 years, maybe more. And so on and off. And so in some ways, I was able to move quickly, make decisions fast because I knew every part of the business. And coming to consumer technology, I work at Pinterest now. I was saying to Elise before we started, I spent the first 2 months asking like, what are these words that people are saying? It's a world that's full of acronyms, full of like coded language. And now about 5 months into my new role, I understand what we're talking about, but I am definitely learning shed loads every day, and understanding how technology gets built, and of course having the opportunity to influence how it gets built. So yes, I could have been very comfortable continuing to be the editor-in-chief of Marie Claire, but I am happy that I made this choice, even though it has been at times like painful, ego shattering, and just generally like some days purely depressing because I feel like a failure. So all of those things are true, in addition to the fact that I think it was a good choice.
Yeah, I relate, having done that. And I'd never, it was so interesting to go to a place that's all brand. There are a couple of big transitions when you leave magazines. And obviously you were probably overseeing digital at that point. But when I left Condé Nast, Condé Nast was still in a different building. And there was really very little connection between the two worlds. And no, you didn't learn. Like, even though I worked on the Lucky site, and when I was at Condé Nast Traveler, I did stuff for digital as well. Like, you're not learning anything really about the internet. And, one of the great privileges, obviously we came up at magazines in sort of the golden age of that industry when everything was amazing. And we were paid nothing, but the perks were incredible. And then to go and publish a magazine and be like, here's this great guide, guys, or here's this amazing fashion story. I know you're going to love it. And there's no feedback. And yes, to go from print and this thing it's this concrete, item that lives on people's coffee tables, to an ongoing conversation online where you get to see the immediate impact of whatever it is that you are putting out into the world, and whether it's resonant or whether it has an audience, is very terrifying and like a major vulnerability bath, I think, for anyone, but an essential part of engaging culturally, and for good and for bad. I mean, there are obviously some things that shouldn't be conversations that are conversations right now.
Yeah, the vulnerability bath sounds like very much my day-to-day life. And in some ways, it's like the amount of feedback in terms of like a data analytics point of view that we do get working in quote unquote consumer technology. Sometimes it's really frustrating to me. I feel like I'm getting like data bullied because I'm telling you that this is not how creators or this is not how publishers behave. And you're going to data bully me with your point of view that is the opposite. But I'm just telling you because I know, because I have been at that world.
Well, and it's a balance between the intuition. It's like, it's a gut math dance, and it's so important, because I think moving to digital before you and doing content and watching sort of what was happening around me, both at magazine sites and then just digitally native sites, it was, when you let data drive all of your decision making, it can be a quick, as we know culturally, you're going right to the bottom. It's not always a good indicator of like what's best for people or what's right. And so I think hopefully we're getting to a place culture where people are understanding that. And big tech, obviously, Pinterest, of all big tech, least of all, but has had a significant role in the erosion of all that's right and good in the world. But like, you can't leave it to algorithms and data. It's just Absolutely not responsible.
Well, and Holly Williams put a question in the chat, which is there a future for print magazines, or will everything go online? And I think that it's relevant to what we're talking about in terms of this world of like, what is expertise and what is expert content? Like, I think that a future for print magazines is when their point of view or the subject matter that they're covering is very specific. So like magazines that do really well are like Runner's World, bicycling. Like, it's an audience where the enthusiasts are super fans, right? If you're purchasing Bicycling magazine and buying that subscription, it means that the experts that are quoted and the stories that are in there are truly, that's your world. Those are your people. And I think that the magazines that have suffered the most are the ones that are trying to be something for everyone, because at this point, there's so much content out there, and I'm curious if there's anyone who works in the media world in this room, or on the brand side. I think that having a very like razor sharp point of view on what your content, what your product is about, allows people and brands and publishers to be more successful, certainly with a print product.
Yeah. I would add sort of along those lines, I think niche audiences will be sort of the dominant force across any content player, digitally or physically. And I think that magazines, like SIPs, special interest publications, like when it feels more like a book, I think like the book magazine hybrid, the thing that's collectible, that should be, print. I think the other thing that we're seeing people sort out as there are more and more platforms coming online and is what's the right content for what platform. And, there's a lot of magazine content in weeklies, et cetera, that obviously belongs on the web. It's not, why kill a tree to do celebrities are just like us. But I do think that people do still like the tangible quality of holding things, and those things should be enduring. They shouldn't be something that you're tossing and recycling every month. I did host a podcast. I hosted the Goop podcast for 3 years, and I will do my own podcast. You need to start a podcast too.
I have listened to Elise probably 1 million hours in my walks over the Brooklyn Bridge. So there's truly no one better than Elise there. I'm curious your thought about this one, Elise. Having developed so much fashion content over the years, certainly in your time at Goop and at Lucky, in terms of the next chapter for the fashion world?
I mean, I was talking to Elizabeth Saltzman actually, and she was talking about during COVID, putting together this brain trust for designers, young and old, and everyone was sharing resources around sustainability and factories and innovations within that industry. We didn't have a ton of time to get into it, but I certainly think, and I hope that this is enduring beyond COVID. I certainly feel this way, that this time at home has required me to think about every single thing that I bring into this house, what I'm surrounding myself with, the energy of the products that I consume, read, engage with. I don't think I'm alone in that. And clearly, I think it's probably the fashion industry, one of the industries that's had the biggest time out, right? To really contemplate what people are going to wear, maybe no more high heels. Maybe Scott Sternberg is right, an entire world, and we're all going to be in sweats. Sweats are the best. As he's sort of made that transition from fashion to leisure wear at the right time, it would seem. But I think at the end of the day, and Aya, you're a testament to this. You come from sort of a fashion art family. You embody that yourself. What we wear and what we buy does matter. I don't think we're going to, and I don't think we're going into a period where we all want to wear burlap potato sacks. I see maybe sort of the wind down of fast fashion. It seems like that's happening anyway. And that people are going to start buying in a more durable way, things that are really high quality, really beautifully made. I think people have a lot of interest, a lot more interest than I think anyone ever gave them credit for, in terms of supply chain sourcing, who made this, what is in it. I certainly saw that at Goop, with beauty products, wellness products. People want to know, and they expect a certain responsibility. And I think that now they'll demand it, particularly post-COVID. And I think that people who can't deliver against that will be in trouble. And I think it's across industries. I also, maybe this is wishful thinking, but I want to believe that we're in this the end of the planned obsolescence era too, with technology, with clothing, that people will start to take things to be repaired, sort of the Patagonia model, that might be something that will endure.
And I mean, in terms of the amount of online shopping that at least I did last year, in terms of just trying to, like, I don't even know, soothe my anxiety. One of the things that we learned at Pinterest, there was a 350% uptake in catalog uploads from retailers and brands. So everyone from D2C brands, giant retailers, etc., because shopping is a really robust surface on Pinterest. At the same time, we were also, because Pinterest is a visual search engine, the company was really putting a lot of effort behind building AR try-on tools, right? Because the amount of online shopping that everyone is doing, okay, I'll get to that question. The amount of online shopping that people are doing, if we could find a way, as we are not going into stores, to virtually try on things in a way that, you know, is like semi close to the real way that you would see it. We just launched 2 AR try-on tools for beauty, lipstick and eyeshadow, and they're actually really fun to play with. And I'm not even Gen Z. And I do think
those things work.
Yes.
I mean, it's like been the holy grail for, I remember like when I did desk size at Lucky, and it was like, this will show you how your jeans are going to fit. And it never worked.
We haven't done fashion yet. We haven't done fashion. We're going to go into the other verticals, but I will say that, like, these sort of lens tools have gotten pretty good. And A, it's fun for entertainment. And B, I think that you know, the amount of times that maybe you've bought something online and then you forget to return it, and then you miss the window, and then, like, whatever, things happen, and then you like end up with with an item that you like, kind of. I think that being able to figure out, like, what's the way that we can all make, as Elise is saying, like, really informed consumer decisions, even though we might not want to go to stores the way that we did in the past. Because I think that, as Elise is saying, like, personal style will always be important. It'll always be valuable, but how we get there is certainly changing. What are you optimistic or excited about, Elise? With the daily pressures of doing what you do, what are you optimistic or excited about? I am excited about the opportunity to make a very small contribution to making the internet a better place for my kid and for all of your children too. So again, that's like lofty, but I do think that we can all play like a tiny role in making digital content and online content more safe and inspiring. And that is something, as I started thinking about, like, what do I want to do in this part of my career? I knew I wanted to learn new skills. So that's why coming to consumer technology was what I was interested in, because I knew I would learn a lot. And I wanted to be at a place where the people that work at the company really want to find a solution to how can we make online content as inspiring as it can be, right? Trolls on the internet will always exist. Bad behavior on the internet will always exist. But what can we do as the adults in the room to make it a safer place?
Yeah, I feel really optimistic. Not to be a Pollyanna, but because I feel like I've been depressed over whole points of my life about where we're going, and I certainly have huge concerns about a lot of things that we need to fix. But I feel like it's very reassuring and fills me with optimism that we seem to be having the right conversations, and that I feel like people have been upgrading and like waking up in a remarkable way. I mean, I think we needed, as horrible as, I don't want to get into politics, but I feel like the last 5 years have sucked, and we needed it, I think, to be able to really reapply ourselves to being on track and getting back to those conversations that matter and thinking about some of these things. Like we were really mindless, at least, or that's how I felt, in our consumption and of all things, content, products. Everything was disposable, faster, cheaper. It's like that, fast, cheap, good, pick two. Like somehow that all went out the window, or we were only choosing fast and cheap. And it's painful. The cleanup is painful. But I feel like, and maybe it's just what I've chosen to consume or surround myself with, but like I'm very optimistic that we're going to look back on this and be like, we really needed that correction. And we were really in a distortion space. And now we're seeing things much more clearly. We're cleaning up all of these systems of inequity and pollution and darkness. And I really think that things are going to start to look up. And I know, Joe, you asked what books I've been reading. I read so compulsively. Two great novels that I read recently, Homeland Elegies and Infinite Country by Patricia Engel, are both wonderful. One's quite long, one's very slim. Infinite Country is really slim. And most of the other stuff I've been reading is research for a book that I'm writing, which is about sort of women and the patriarchy and sin and the things that we police in ourselves and police in each other. And so I think that also goes to like why I'm optimistic, because I feel like we're starting to be aware of all of these systems in a really, not that we haven't been having this conversation for decades, but like this moment in time seems to be when people are really starting to pay attention and unwind them. Okay. Aya, did you catch all of these other questions?
Yeah,
Smarter strategies.
Amy asks, what do you do to stay connected with your team while working remotely? So as I am fairly new to my new job at Pinterest, I have kind of gone the wrong direction in terms of allowing my calendar to sort of like get out of control. It's actually only now that I'm getting a handle on it. I don't have an assistant, but one of the assistants at Pinterest very kindly did this thing called calendar hygiene, in which she took a month of my calendar and sort of assessed, went through the entire thing and assessed what I was doing and presented back to me a spreadsheet of like, you're spending X amount of hours here, blah, 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 blah. And she did this meeting with me in which we were just laughing, like I was falling off my chair, because she was like, Aya, you were in 174 meetings in the month of February, and that's a short month. And I was like, I know, it's out of control. Like I was letting anyone who wanted to put time on my calendar just throw it on. Like, I'm home, you're home, let's meet. And I wasn't allowing time to like eat lunch or like, I don't even know, go to the bathroom, take a walk around the block. I would literally sit down in the morning and then not get up until I was running to go pick up my child from daycare. And so this month, now that it's March, I am like ruthlessly taking things off my calendar, mainly because I was starting to it wasn't healthy, to be doing that many meetings. I have a standing desk. I'm at my standing desk right now. So I wasn't like sitting down all those 174 meetings, but still. So in terms of staying connected, a lot of what I do at my job, Amy, is external meetings. So meeting with partners, whether it's publishers or big creators, macro influencers, that kind of stuff. So those are the kind of meetings I can't cancel those, but I can sort of limit the amount of internal product meetings that are not my direct one-on-ones. The one-on-ones with people on my team, I'll never let those come off my calendar. I do those weekly. I mean, we're such a small team that we work together truly every minute of the day. So it's not like I don't see them outside of those one-on-ones, but I think that having dedicated 45-minute or 1 hour one-on-ones with each person on my team, each weekly, even if it's just to like talk and spend time getting to know each other. Usually we have a pretty packed agenda, but and then we do like fun events and karaoke, like, that kind of stuff. But that's how I stay connected. it's actually too connected. I need to disconnect a little bit. That's actually what I was trying to tell you.
Hey, oh, sorry.
Are you going to do calendar hygiene, Elise?
No, because I'm not working with anyone right now, and it's awesome. This introvert needed some time to herself. Question because Jordan asked a question. When you say technology, are you talking about like digital technology, or are you talking about product technology? So before we answer that, Alva, what is your advice to someone who knows they want a creative career but is not sure where to place themselves? What are you looking for in fresh blood? I can answer that. I
would say for the technology question, so in terms of finding
out of the box, do not do anything proprietary, do not build anything, do not hire, like there's so many tech solutions that are available, inexpensive, very scalable. Do not go proprietary, because then you have to maintain it, you have to build it. Every time you want to integrate a new piece of technology, it's hard and requires more technologists, those are the hardest people to find, and they make the most money. So just whatever you can do, and just ask questions, like of all of the similar players in your space, like you could hire a consultant to tell you pretty much what's happening on a code level and what they're using. We made so many bad choices at Goop over the years that have been so expensive and unwieldy to unwind. So do not go crazy. You don't need it. Sorry.
Basically, you're saying like, don't try to make the wheel.
Do not reinvent the wheel. Use Shopify. There's so much great out of the box scalable technology that will not bankrupt you and that does not require a huge team to maintain. Yeah. And focus on what's proprietary to you and what is only you can do and only you can create. Everything else is just window dressing, and you can get it. It doesn't have to be, and you can white label, like you can skin stuff to make it look exactly how you want without needing to build it. And remember, I love, the CTO at Goop is one of my best friends, and I adore him, and he's brilliant, and we needed him to unwind all of the mistakes that we made. So I say this with love to every single engineer. They like to build things. So, but you're not a tech company. And if given the option, they will build. And that will always be their choice, in the same way that I'm not going to want to use anyone else's copy. And Aya's not going to let anyone else style anything, but just keep that in mind when you talk to people, because that's what they want to do. They want to build things. Of course, we're all creative, but out of the box.
100% agreed. And especially when you think about the big platforms that you will need to use to amplify and get new customers, because I'm assuming if you have a small sustainable fashion brand, then your passion is there, right? Your passion is sustainable fashion. So if you spend time, as Elise is saying, building your own, platform, that's just going to be taking time away from your work in the sustainable fashion sphere. Let technology be good at what technology does, and you should be good at what you do. Shopify has over 1 million merchants that they service. And so they have figured it out. And I don't know if that's what you're talking about in terms of implementing technology, but like I had mentioned before, in 2020, we at Pinterest had an integration with Shopify that would allow brands and small D2C brands to ingest their entire catalog onto Pinterest, and then we could amplify them and they could get new customers and drive a whole new arm of business. So it's a great way when you use those tools that you can partner with a lot of different platforms very quickly.
Exactly. They do all the work for you, so you're not doing that work each individual time. Okay, so Alva wants to know what we're looking for in fresh blood. I love hard workers. And this is how I got where I got in my career. Luck, sure. There's always luck. There's serendipity in everyone's life. I really think it's a flywheel that you have to get going, and then doors start to just fly open. Because I'm woo-woo and spiritual. So I think the universe will get on side with you once you start going. But I had a part-time freelance job at Lucky, working on the Lucky breaks, like the sweepstakes in the back of the book, like not glamorous at all. I was psyched to be there, and I just killed it. Like, I mailed the shit out of those samples and like trafficked those sweepstakes rules, and just like, I was so on, stayed late to clean the conference room. Like, I would do anything that anyone had. And that's how I got the attention of other people who felt like they could trust me with more worthwhile work. All work is worthwhile. It all has to get done. But that is how I climbed my way up the masthead, was by being so invaluable because I could be trusted with the details, that I just got better and better work until it got to the point where I literally couldn't do it all. And then they had to bring someone in beneath me. And I worked that for years, and like eagerness, attention to detail, and like, it will get you so far. You'd be shocked at how many people don't have those qualities. What do you think?
I mean, I can't answer the question better than you. I certainly did the same, especially because when I first started at Teen Vogue, it was a launch brand, which meant that there were like 10 people that worked there. So because of that, again, I was able to like climb the ladder quicker, mainly because I had more visibility to the leadership. Whereas like, years later, there was, many tens of people that worked there. Because I was on the launch team, I was able to be, talk to the editor-in-chief every day and was in meetings with all the lead editors. And so that meant that I made myself available for like weekend photo shoots, and just learned a lot more quickly than I would have if I would have just sort of not made myself, like pushed myself to the front of the line of wanting to volunteer to be a part of whatever was going on. And I think that certainly when you're at a startup like that, there's an endless amount of opportunity to like work yourself to the bone.
And going to sort of another question below, Ava, was like sort of similar, this like fashion art hybrid and how you get into those careers. I don't know if this was true for you, because I feel like your job was more aligned with your natural skill set. But I recognized too, like, I was happy to be in the industry. I wanted to do something with words. I like magazines, books. And then I also acknowledged and recognized that my job wasn't going to fulfill every part of my creative soul. And this even goes to, because I know we're almost out of time. So like Amon's question as well, like right on the side, start a blog, like start an Etsy shop, like whatever it is, like you're gonna have to find ways to fulfill all of your creative interests that aren't going to be entirely encapsulated by your job. Like, it's very rare to have your job be your passion, particularly right out of the gate. And I think trying to just be tangentially fulfilled by it, while also leaving the door open to like your puppeteering. I'm sure Aya's still puppeteering on the side. But like, you paint your shoes. You were painting your shoes.
Yeah,
that
well,
night,
but I mean, to,
like,
to the point of what of Eman and Ava's questions, which is that like you have multiple interests, right? You love your job in fashion, but you're also really interested in art and or sustainability. And how do you integrate all those things into one? I agree with Elise, like sometimes that will be possible and sometimes it's not. And that's actually truly okay. In that I realized at a certain point that as much as I was interested in studying and, you know, working in the puppeteering and puppetry world, that I didn't want to make it my job. And I had made it my job. I mean, you know, performing in like downtown theater productions, as much as you can call that a job. But I was like, this is not a long-term career. I'm not going to be able to grow here. I need to follow another path that is interesting to another set of my various different interests as a human being. And that's how I ended up in the fashion world.
And we have, as we've both said, we're both moms, we have bills to pay. And so like that, unless you're a trust fund kid, like that always is going to be part of it. You know, like I remember early on in my career getting this advice, like when you're thinking about a job, you can evaluate it for sort of your base, your salary, and maybe you work at a company that has bonuses. Maybe you're at a startup where equity is a concern, and maybe someday that will be worth something. Then there's just the experience, and I've certainly had jobs that felt like going back to school. And then there's the value of the brand and whether that will help you down the road and open doors for you as you build your resume and build your career. And brand has certainly been important to me, but like not as important as learning. And at different times, there have been payoffs. So like when I went to this not glamorous tech company, I was paid really so much better than I was in magazines, with like the potential to earn a lot more. And I was learning a ton. And there was no brand. But that was okay. Like I was willing to make that payoff. So at any point, at any job that you're at, there will be, those things will show up. And like when you get to the point in your career where Joe's calling you for jobs, some of them might be for like really splashy and exciting brands. And some might be for like incredible learning opportunities, and you'll be interested in both at different times in your life.